Welcome to Forbidden Archives, the Illuminati conspiracy where, well, myths and history kind of collide. It's all about those whispers, those secret societies, those ideas that just won't go away.
Yeah, and today we're diving into a really fascinating one.
Right. Kirkness overall, John Robison, and, well, the whole birth of this Illuminati conspiracy. It's a big one.
It is. It's about like this enduring idea of a secret group, controlling everything, pulling the strings.
Yeah, and we're starting right at the beginning. Like, where did this whole thing come from? And what's really interesting? It all starts with this guy, John Robison. You wouldn't expect him to be the father of this whole conspiracy.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. In 1797, he was like the epitome of the Scottish intellectual elite.
Really?
Oh, yeah. He was a professor at Edinburgh University
Oh, wow.
for over 20 years. Professor of natural philosophy, which is basically science as we'd call it now.
Huh.
Yeah, and he was a big deal in mathematics, optics, even contributed to the Encyclopaedia Britannica.
So not exactly, some fringe guy ranting in a basement.
Not at all. This guy was a respected authority.
And then he wrote this book, and it basically eclipses everything else he did. It was a huge bestseller.
Yeah,
But the title, talk about attention grabbing. Proofs of a conspiracy against all the religions and governments of Europe.
catchy, right?
A little bit, yeah. And you can see why this is considered like the starting point for the Illuminati conspiracy as we know it.
Absolutely. I mean, he wasn't just, theorizing. He claimed to have concrete evidence of this massive, like, global conspiracy.
Okay, so who are the bad guys in this story?
Well, according to Robison, it was this Masonic group, the Illuminati, and their goal to basically tear down civilization.
Whoa.
Yeah, subvert religion, government, the whole nine yards, all for their, quote, godless agenda. And the result, well, darkness overall, as he put it, controlled by, these unseen puppet masters.
Okay, so listening to this, I think the big question everyone has is like, why? Why did this idea take hold? What was going on in the world that made people, I don't know, ready to believe this?
Right. Well, if we look back at 1797, Europe was in a state of utter chaos. I mean, the French Revolution was a seismic event. It sent shockwaves of fear across the continent, and Britain was right in the crosshairs.
Can you imagine? It must have seemed like the world was ending.
It really was a time of radical change. The monarchy, gone, executed, the church, stripped of its power. And then, to top it all off, you have Napoleon on the rise, threatening to spread this revolution everywhere.
So people were looking for answers, like how did this happen? Who's to blame?
Exactly. At first, a lot of people pointed fingers at the Enlightenment thinkers, those philosophers who, championed reason and an individual liberty.
But from what I understand, they weren't actually calling for violent revolution, right?
Not really. Some even became victims of the very revolution they supposedly inspired. It's ironic, really.
So if it wasn't them, then who?
Well, then there was the Jacobin Club. For a while, they seemed like the obvious puppet masters. But then they were overthrown, too. They ended up facing the guillotine themselves. So the question remained, who was really behind it all?
And that's where John Robison enters the picture.
Right. He comes along and says, hold on, I've got the answer. His big argument and proofs is that the French Revolution wasn't some random event. It wasn't the Enlightenment's fault. It was a deliberate, planned conspiracy. And the masterminds, the Illuminati.
Okay, so he presents this alternative explanation. Did people buy it?
Oh, yeah. The book was a massive hit, reprinted all over Britain, Ireland, even in America. It clearly tapped into some deep-seated anxieties.
I guess in a time of chaos, a clear enemy is kind of comforting.
Yeah, and Robison provided that. He gave people a villain, a motive, a storyline. It made the chaos make sense.
So who was this supposed mastermind, this Illuminati leader?
Robison pointed to Adam Weishaupt.
Okay, tell me about this guy. Was he really this evil genius, like pulling the strings from the shadows?
The truth about Weishaupt and Bavarian Illuminati is, well, a lot less exciting.
Oh.
He's certainly an intense guy, very controlling, had trouble attracting members to his little secret society.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they had all these elaborate ranks like novice, minorville, and so on. But their goals were kind of vague.
So not exactly the global puppet masters Robison made them out to be.
No, not even close. In fact, the Bavarian authorities shut them down in 1784. Weishaupt was exiled and spent the rest of his life writing, well, mostly complaining about how unfairly he was treated.
Wow, so this whole Illuminati thing was kind of a dud.
Pretty much. But Robison saw something much darker in it.
Okay, so he takes this failed, relatively small group and turns them into, what, global masterminds?
Yeah, I mean, he saw Weishaupt's ambition, the structure of the order, and the fact that it was suppressed as evidence of something much bigger and more dangerous.
Huh. I guess context is everything.
It really is. And remember, there was already this whole Illuminati scare brewing.
Even before Robison's book.
Oh, yeah, there were pamphlets and rumors flying around about this godless group plotting to destroy everything. Robison used all that. to build his case.
So he wasn't making it all up. He just maybe took some liberties with the interpretation.
You could say that. He saw the Illuminati as the literal cause of the French Revolution, not just a symbol of the changing times.
And it's important to remember that Robison wasn't just some objective observer. He had his own, well, baggage, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, starting in 1785, his health started declining. He had this mysterious illness that caused him a lot of pain. He became more isolated, started relying on opium.
Oh, wow, that must have been tough.
It was, and you can see how that, combined with the paranoia of the times, might have influenced his thinking.
So personal anxieties feeding into this larger narrative of fear.
Exactly. And then there's his professional life. He was a scientist, remember? And he was fiercely opposed to the new French chemistry, Lavoisier and all that.
Okay, so how did that tie into the conspiracy?
He saw this new chemistry as a threat. It was materialistic, rejected the old theories. He believed it was part of the Illuminati plot to, undermine traditional knowledge.
So in his mind, scientists like Lavoisier, even Joseph Priestley, were Illuminati agents.
Yeah, spreading their dangerous ideas through Masonic lodges. He even claimed that Madame Lavoisier held secret rituals, burning old chemistry books and stuff.
Okay, that's a little out there.
Yeah, and it gets even weirder. He cites this German pamphlet that claimed they were dissecting children's brains at these, high society salons. Trying to understand the essence of life or something?
Yikes, that's dark.
It is. But it shows how deep this fear ran.
And then there's Robison's own experience with Freemasons.
Right, he was a member himself in Scotland. But when he traveled to Europe, he was shocked by what he saw in the lodges there.
What was so different?
Well, he described them as schools of irreligion, filled with fanatics, obsessed with mystical ideas.
Like what?
Oh, all sorts of stuff. Boom-A, Swedenborg, Rosicrucianism, magic. It freaked him out.
So he saw this moral decay in European Freemasonry and connected it to the chaos of the French Revolution.
Exactly. It all fit into his narrative of a secret conspiracy undermining society.
Okay, so his book was a bestseller, but did it actually have any real-world impact?
It depends where you look. In Britain, it was mostly just talk. The government wasn't too worried about a defunct Bavarian group. They had bigger problems, like, a extant French invasion.
But in America, it was a different story.
Yeah, the U.S. was still young, politically divided. You had the Federalists, who were, let's say, suspicious of the French Revolution.
Okay.
And they saw Robison's book as proof that their opponents, who were more sympathetic to France, were part of this grand conspiracy.
So it became a political weapon.
Absolutely. They used it to discredit their rivals, to scare people, even accused Thomas Jefferson of being an Illuminati member.
No way.
Yeah, it was a wild time. And even though the Illuminati scare eventually died down, it left its mark on American political thought.
This idea that there are always these secret forces at work.
Exactly. And it didn't end there. Robison's ideas were picked up by other conspiracy theorists later on, like Nessa Webster, who connected the Illuminati to a supposed Juve conspiracy.
Wow.
It's amazing how these ideas get recycled and reinterpreted. Even Winston Churchill was kind of fascinated by this stuff. And then you have groups like the John Birch Society, who see the Illuminati as the predecessors to communism.
So Robison's legacy lives on.
In a way, yeah. And then you have all the pop culture stuff, the all-seeing eye on the dollar bill, for example. That's become a symbol of the Illuminati for a lot of people.
It's funny how an image can take on a life of its own.
It is. And it's interesting what John Playfair, a contemporary of Robison, said about him after he died. He basically said that Robison was so willing to believe in this conspiracy because the French Revolution was so shocking. People couldn't believe it was a genuine popular uprising.
It was easier to blame a shadowy group.
Right. And Playfair also pointed out that the lack of evidence for the conspiracy was seen as proof of its effectiveness. Like, they're so good at hiding, we can't even find them.
Clever, but a little scary, too.
Yeah, and that's why the Illuminati myth is so powerful. It plays on our fears, our desire for simple explanations. It's this idea that even in a free society, someone might be controlling us from the shadows.
So in a nutshell, John Robison, this respected scientist, ends up inadvertently creating one of the most enduring conspiracy theories in history. All because of the times he lived in, his personal struggles, and his interpretation of the events around him.
It's a fascinating case study, really. And it makes you wonder, what are the Illuminati of today? What are the modern anxieties that are fueling new conspiracy theories? What events are so shocking that we're looking for hidden hands to blame? It's something to think about, right?
Definitely. It makes you realize that the search for answers, even conspiratorial ones, is a part of human nature. And who knows what new darkness overall we'll imagine next.